Hello, Monetization Nation. Andy Goldstrom is a business strategist, B2B growth expert, professor of entrepreneurship, and author. Over his career, he's built and sold fast-growing companies, including 2 that made it on the Inc. 500. Today, Andy shares his entrepreneurial journey and what he has learned about being a good leader. One of the things he's going to teach us is why leaders should always speak last. Tectonic shifts are constantly transforming the earth and business, causing destruction and huge growth opportunities. I'm Nathan William, the host of Monetization Nation, where we learn how to leverage business tectonic shifts to transform monetization. I'm joined today by Andy Goldstrom. He's the author of Grow Like a Pro. He's developed a model called business fitness that helps business leaders optimize a business's value through its lifetime. He's the managing partner of Mid-Course Advisors. Andy and his team grow companies profitably and do it fast. Andy is a business growth and strategy expert. He started his advisory service after he built and sold 2 Inc. 500 companies, where he developed this approach called business fitness. With this model, he helps business leaders succeed and avoid many pitfalls that those without this knowledge or experience endure. And he's also a part-time instructor at Georgia State University, where he teaches entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andy.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you start off by sharing with us something that you are super passionate about?
I am passionate about fitness and competing. So
Okay.
I've always enjoyed it as a stress reliever and something that's healthy for me. And frankly, COVID's, one of the benefits of COVID, there aren't that many of them, but this time has allowed me, instead of being on planes or commuting somewhere, I've had a little extra time where I've actually been able to enjoy the outdoors and take my fitness game up a level. So I enjoy the way, it allows me to connect with others, and I like to bike, I like to hike. So that's one of my things.
That sounds great. Are you signed up for any upcoming races you're getting ready for?
I used to do a lot of races. I did adventure races that were, often a full day or more. And I used to run a lot of 10Ks. But as my doctor told me about 5 years ago, Andy, you're 6'1" and about 200 pounds. You're not 5'6" and about 160 pounds. And so it's better that you avoid some of that pounding, go forward with some of those aches and pains as you get older. So I'm enjoying the fitness that I can deal with now, but I still compete. I still work hard, and still enjoy it.
Sounds great. Can you tell us about your journey to build and sell these 2 Inc. 500 companies?
It's not a planned story. When I finished my undergraduate degree, I had a computer science background. So I learned how to program in things like Fortran, things and COBOL, things that don't exist or really aren't used today. It's come so far. But it gave me an idea about what to do and how to use technology from that time. And I needed to apply it to something. And so I was able to apply it to the business world, and started out after graduate school at what is a company called GTE, which is now Verizon. And, I worked it was big corporate, a lot of resources, a lot of good people, but it was too slow and too stodgy for my taste. It just took a lot to make decisions and get things done and add value. And so, and the other part was there were a lot of reorganizations that were going on outside of my span of control or purview at such a young age. And I realized early on that that wasn't the ultimate fit for me. And so it was around that time that companies started, this was in the early 90s, companies started outsourcing more. And there was an outsourcing wave, especially in the real estate industry, where from a technology standpoint and an execution standpoint was a little bit behind the times. And so I saw an outsourcing opportunity, and there was a company that was formed called USI, and it was basically formed on a platform of a fully integrated service offering. So anything a business that uses its real estate could require. And and that was planning, strategic planning, transaction management, design and construction, legal review, database administration. And what we did was we made a company's real estate an asset as opposed to a cost center, and sold to the CFO. And what made so timing is a lot about success with an entrepreneurial venture, and the timing was perfect. And we actually were able to get a few customers who had very good interest and wanted to sign up with us before we even launched. So we were able to break even within 6 months, and which is pretty unheard of. And we were able to expand with our clients as they grew because they had other needs. And we became an Inc. 500 company shortly thereafter. And so, it was a great trajectory. And we had big clients like United Technologies and Delta Airlines and Computer Sciences Corporation and Boeing, and I'm doing all of their work with teams on site doing all of their work. And in 2005, so it's been a few years since my first one, we saw changes in the marketplace. Companies wanted to consolidate and go global, and technology and the internet did some of that. The world became smaller. There was a desire to save money. And so some of our biggest clients, coincidentally, within a couple months asked us, we'd like you to do facility management work, which we hadn't really done. And we wanted you to have a more global footprint. And our global work we were in every state, but our global work was somewhat limited. And so we had a choice. It was put your head in the sand and ignore your customers. Generally not a good idea. Mm-hmm. You build it, you buy it, or you sell yourself. And so, or you grow it organically. And so we saw facility management as an important but lower value, lower margin business. It's a very high resource intensive business. And so we ended up selling ourselves in 2005 to Johnson Controls. And so we monetized the business because we had long-term contracts that had a sustainable revenue model that had fees and commissions in various different areas. We had really good customer base. So we had a sustainable base, and we had a sticky business model that, because we were managing all of their real estate and had a database of all their work that allowed us to really do well. And so that was the first one. If getting to know me better, a la GTE, after Johnson Controls bought us, I became the executive in charge of a big region for Johnson Controls, including the facility management business. And I learned a lot and managed a lot. The number of people and the amount of revenue grew substantially in terms of what I oversaw. And it was $50 million worth of business and 500 people. But again, it was a little bit like GTE in that when we won a new account, there was a time it took 2 months to get an offer letter out of HR. And so, just their pace was different. And so after my golden handcuff came off, I looked for another company to help grow that was smaller and more entrepreneurial again. And so I took over for the founder of a waste recycling company, where the founder had taken it as far as he could and needed a revamping of the business, basically newer technology, newer processes, a new leadership team, new abilities to generate revenue. And within 3 years, that company really took off again, where the revenue grew 30% and the profit grew 70% in 2 years. And building on the base that we had, that achieved Inc. 500 status as well. And that got sold to Waste Management. And so those were the two Inc. 500 stories I have. Since then, I've had a run with Deutsche Bank where I had global experience in a banking capacity. And for the past 5 years, I've had mid-course advisors where I frankly just help small business and medium-sized business leaders do the right things, to adapt their business models throughout the life of their business.
Thank you so much for sharing. Of those amazing success stories, what is the biggest home run that you've hit?
So it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One is I'm a big baseball junkie. I've always liked baseball. And in fact, my mother's father was a vendor at Yankee Stadium in the Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig era. So I've always been a baseball fan, and I live in Atlanta now and follow the Braves. But it's interesting from when people ask me what's their biggest success or what's their biggest home run, I have a different kind of take on it. A lot of people talk about the awards that they've won or the accounts that they've gotten, they've secured, or victories that they've had. And mine isn't really that. Mine is the fact that with some of the teams that I've led, I've been told by people that I've worked with that I inspired them, and that they actually came to people to ask, or came to me directly to ask if they could work for me. And so to me, when I started at USI, we had one account, we had others coming in, but it was basically, do you just run the business on that one account, or are you going to grow it? And if you're going to grow it, you have to have, the right people who are incentivized and developed in the right way so that they can do the work. So you can grow and scale your company. And so, I always tried to set a good example for that, because I was more of an account person than a salesperson. I started in an account role when I was younger. But in understanding that if I wanted to sell something, I was only as good as the people who were working with me, and that I was a servant to them. And I, for those who can see me on the video, I'm bald. I'm not the most articulate. I'm not the best looking. I'm not the smoothest talker, but I am very trustworthy, and I deliver what I say I'm going to do. And so I wanted my teams to do that. And so it was an honor and a pleasant surprise when more than once people have said, you're the type of leader I want to work for. And that, if you're able to help others achieve their goals and in turn help yourself, there's no better achievement than that.
Yeah. What is the biggest failure or mistake that you've made in your career, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I'm glad it happened early on, because I've adapted. But there was a time that I was leading a team, and it was a senior team, and we were in a conference room, and I kind of knew what the right answer was. In terms of what was being presented by our CFO that day. I knew what I was looking for. I kind of knew what the right answer was. And for some reason that day, when that CFO, who was a great guy, presented, I cut him off and didn't give him the airtime that he deserved for the work that he did. And so, what it did was, the answer that he gave and the impact of that meeting, was important, because we were reviewing financials and our progress. But the impact to him in terms of the trust I had to regain after I kind of knocked him off his chair wasn't great. It took time to rebuild that. And I learned a great lesson, never to let that happen again. You have to be the last person in the room to talk. You got to let everybody else have their say. That doesn't mean that they're the ultimate decision maker, but everybody needs to have a contribution, and because that's what allows a company to build. So it was a tough lesson, but a good lesson to learn.
What an important lesson of leaders talk last. Let everyone share their point of view and then share yours. And not only does that allow us to listen before we talk, but it allows us to gather the valuable feedback of those team members. It makes the feedback that we give much more effective when we finally give it.
Yeah, my view, I totally agree. And my view is, in my consulting business with the great people, the great business leaders that I work with, or even on my own teams that I manage, they all have the answers. Because they know the industries, they know what their function is, they know what they're working on, but they may have different biases or be too busy to have been able to pull that apart. And so, or bring that to the forefront. So if you can create an environment where that can be, bless you, if you create an environment where that can come to the forefront, they'll answer their, they'll come up with their own answers before you even have to say anything other than I agree.
Yes.
Right.
That is so important. And that's one of the things I like best about speaking last is when you speak last, if someone comes up with the idea you are going to say before you say it, you can give them credit for it. And then you have buy-in of those people instead of you saying the direction and then you trying to get them to buy in on your idea.
Yeah. Just for any, for your listeners out there, you're probably sitting back and saying to yourself, you know what, what's being talked about makes a lot of sense. But in terms of people being consistently being able to implement it and have it be part of a company's culture and the way it all works, not just with the top leader, but all the leaders, it makes such a huge difference. And those that I work with, I find that, the transparency and the ability to understand the goals of the company and how everybody's contributing to it and give people to bubble up ideas that create innovation and all those things are vastly missing. And then when when you have a COVID situation or an adverse situation with some, competition or something else that hits you, what do? You kind of lock down. You don't open up and think clearly or think ahead. And so those types of things that are baked into your DNA become that much more important. It's just like, use the baseball analogy. It's just like the best quarterbacks like Tom Brady or whatever, they operate with the coolest heads under the toughest conditions and adversity. And that's what makes a difference.
Yeah. Plus, one more advantage to this idea you're sharing. If we speak last and we have to share or make a decision that they don't agree with, at least they felt heard.
Yep.
And it's a lot easier to swallow feedback if you know the person at least listened to what you had to say before they made that contrary decision.
Amen.
All right, let's talk about monetization. What is the best monetization secret or strategy that you could share?
So I think the best secret or strategy is part of one of the shifts that people have needed to take during this last year, and that's focusing on today. And so it's not about new innovations necessarily. It's actually focusing on what's in front of you to actually create more cash opportunity. And so there are people who go out there and try and create whole new business lines and, thinking that what they have isn't going to work because of the conditions today. And it creates, there's a ramp up time and a lot of risk involved in that and a lot of investment required, where for most companies that have a book of business, there are opportunities where they've already created relationships, have a trusting relationship, can actually sell them other things, either vertically or horizontally that will complement what you have, a cheaper version of the same model of whatever you sell them, or something that has more value that you can charge more for, frankly, because of the pain point that they have right now. And so A way to monetize right now that I've encouraged a lot of clients is, rather than figuring out how to do something new, spend time providing more value to your existing clients. Second thing is, if you have a pipeline of business, those are people who've already demonstrated interest. So they've already cleared the first hurdle. So what is it that you can do to reduce that sales cycle to help provide more value and focus on that? And then the third thing, frankly, is about, is about receivables and, understanding your cash conversion cycle and what it takes from the moment that you outlay $1 to provide a service or a product to the time that the cash actually hits your bank. Not just the sale or the accrual, but the actual cash that you can pay bills on. And so those three things, are what I kind of talk about is looking just out beyond the hood. So it's when you're driving your car, just looking straight ahead in terms of what you can do to, right in front of you. But at the same time, for the companies that have succeeded, they have to look down the road so they don't run into a tree and be able to look at what can they invest in that will actually help them either, through COVID or coming out of COVID in terms of what they're doing. And one example is a commercial cleaning company that I've worked with that, is focusing, was focusing on everything. So, they were focusing on retirement homes and office buildings and hospitality and retail, and a lot of it dried up, and or there wasn't as much of it. You don't need to clean an office as much if there aren't people in it. Now the level of cleaning is different. But what I did was I focused him on the leadership there on developing a niche and being specific where they can make a name for themselves. And it involves post-construction cleanup. So if somebody builds out a new office or builds a new building and they need cleaning, these are the guys who can do it and really have an understanding of all that. So we repositioned them so that they could get all the revenue in that they could with the book of business they had. But then looking down the line, there's going to be a lot of office changes that require construction in terms of the way people work go forward, either in size or configuration or whatever. And by being in position to do that and being the biggest fish in a smaller pond, you're more likely to succeed.
I love that. So to summarize, what you're saying is we should take our existing customer base that we've already built relationships with, that already trusts us, and we should try to sell them another product. We should diversify maybe the product or service that's available. And some ways that people are doing that a lot today effectively is through information products, where they're saying, I already have this client base, now can I sell them an online course, or can I sell them a virtual summit, or can I sell them an event that they can come to, or there's a whole series, a mastermind course, right? There's a whole series of products that we can use to upsell that existing customer base. We don't have to build something new. We are selling them an additional service or information package or something like that.
Yeah. And the whole thing that's important is you really have to understand how the pain points of customers have changed. So if their needs have changed in terms of the way they consume, like if the example that you just gave is if you normally would, and this happened to me in my business a little bit, if you would normally, visit a client and provide instruction to help them change the way that they do things. Well, maybe they don't have the ability to do that because they can't gather now and may gather differently. So do you have the actual, modules that people can use online and learn in a different way and penetrate in a different way that will actually satisfy that need? And you may end up making more revenue because you'll have, even though your price point is different because it's being consumed differently, you might reach a lot more people and it's a lot more scalable.
Yeah, I have a great example of that just happened a week or so ago. The largest family history conference is called JEDCOM. And normally they hold this event in Salt Lake City, and there's about 30,000 people that come each year to talk about family history. And because of COVID, they couldn't do it in person like they normally did. And so they did it virtual. and they actually increased from, I could have these numbers wrong. This is just someone told me the story. They increased from about 30,000 attendees to 300,000 attendees because they were able to go global. And so many people that were normally not able to fly to Salt Lake City and attend this live event were able to attend. 10 times more people attended their event.
That's crazy.
The same event, they were producing the same speakers and just were able to push it out to a much larger audience. Thank you so much, Andy, for sharing your stories and knowledge with us today. Here's some of my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, success is a lot about timing and being prepared to seize the opportunity when the time comes. Number 2, leaders need to know how to adapt to the changes in the market, just as we are teaching with tectonic shifts. Number 3, good leaders build trust by doing what they say they're going to do. Number 4, a leader is only as good as their team. Number 5, a leader should talk last. Talking last builds trust, openness, gives room for feedback, and helps everyone feel heard. If you enjoyed this interview and want to learn more about Andy, you can listen to or watch part 2 of this episode or connect with him on his LinkedIn profile. If you want to learn more about his company, Midcourse Advisors, you can visit his website at midcourseadvisors.com. And there's a link to both of those sites in the blog post for this episode. Did you like today's episode? Then please follow these channels to receive free digital monetization content. Number 1, you can get a free monetization assessment of your business or subscribe to the free monetization e-magazine at monetizationnation.com. You can also subscribe to the Monetization Nation YouTube channel and podcast. You can also follow Monetization Nation on Instagram and Twitter. What is your strategy for being a successful leader? Please join our private Monetization Nation Facebook group and share your insights with other digital monetizers. Thanks for joining me for this episode. I wish you success in your efforts to become a better leader. Do you want to become a better digital monetizer? To receive great monetization stories and secrets, please go to monetizationnation.com and join free. And if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the show and share it.